Good morning, everyone. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday morning for a very special interview with Prime Minister Dr. The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. The media present this morning are Selwyn Well, representing WeFM, and Rachel Bain from MTV. This as the Prime Minister continues his series of media engagements on a rotational basis with members of the media. Thank you again for joining us. Prime Minister, good morning to you.
And of course, good morning to our representative media persons who are here with us today, and of course to all our listeners throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. As we did promise when we did the first search program, that we'd have it on a regular basis, and changing the personnel who are going to be actually on base with us. So I would first like to make some opening remarks as it relates to some key issues of importance to the country. As we all are aware, the ability to confront and deal successfully with COVID-19 is one of the key issues confronting the country. Because no matter what else happens, if we do not have health, everything else is going to be secondary. Data on COVID-19, as been said, as you know, what's taking place right now is our ability to vaccinate the population. And I just want to point out, the program has been going on pretty successfully in a general sense, with a little hitch here and there. From reports given to me this morning, 2,700 persons have now been officially vaccinated with the first dose of the vaccine. I also want to mention the vaccination program is ongoing in Carriacou and Petite Martinique, and has been, from reports, been pretty successful in terms of the ability of the people. We'd also expect to have additional shipment of COVID-19 vaccine, hopefully very soon. Efforts are being made at the recent heads of government meeting that we had by virtual means, and confirmed that, particularly in the case of the OECS, more vaccines are going to be arriving today, I understand, and Grenada should get from other members a portion that can meet some of our basic needs at this particular time. Government is also continuing its efforts to procure more additional vaccines population. The goal is to vaccinate at least 60% of the population. When that is achieved, I think we can basically say that we can basically go back to business as usual with a certain level of masking to continue for a little while. But we will be able to do a lot of things that we are not able to do at this particular time. The latest reports from the Ministry COVID-19 Secretariat is that we have no new active cases at this point in time, and that's extremely good news, because it is telling us that we've done a relatively good job in controlling this virus in our country at this particular time. So that's an update on the COVID-19 situation. As far as the infrastructure, as I've said before, given the impact of on the economy of the virus as it relates to key economic areas like tourism, and of course the impact on St. George's University, which is so important to the development of the country. The main area of opportunities for economic activity, for job creation, is in the construction area, and of course infrastructure, of course, are highly correlated with, of course, construction activities in the country. So I just want to mention that a feasibility study has been on the Molyneux problem that we had there with the difficulties we experienced in the Western Main Road. That has been completed. And it was submitted to the CDB for approval, and it is currently being reviewed. Clearly, after this, the question of whether we attempt to build back the road at that particular area or whether we create a bypass. The latest information we have, it appears more leaning towards another bypass. Probably will cost too much money if we attempt to rebuild on the seaside at that section of Molyneux. But that the final decision will be made soon. I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about the St. John's River project at the River Road area. That project looks as it's getting ready to move. Designs have been completed. Public tender is currently ongoing, and the deadline for bids will be March 3rd. So we expect to see some serious movement there. In the area, I know a lot of people have been complaining about the traffic lights in the country. Just want to report that the government will undertake a complete retrofitting of all traffic lights in the country. Tenders have been out since December and are scheduled to be submitted by the 28th of February, which of course is already almost there with us. In the creation of the educational project, many of the schools that we have been, as we've been saying to teachers and other persons, the government has been expending tremendous amount of resources in all aspects of the school system, not only dealing with protecting our teachers and our children from the virus, but at the same time renovating and expanding many of the schools and rebuilding some. I just give a list of it. Bishop's College, Carriacou, is to be completed from the work taking place there. It's going well. It should be completed in 2022 early. PBC and Mount Rose SDA is to be completed in December 2021. And other schools to benefit is St. David's Catholic Secondary School, St. Andrew's Anglican Primary, and the Grenada Christian Academy. Also, it's important, there have been lots of reports on the St. Patrick's breakwater and problems that we've had there with reports of persons being affected with erosion on one section of the St. Patrick's Road leading into St. Patrick's. The Smith Warner International Group was contracted to conduct a study of the area, which commenced a week ago. The duration of the study is for 3 months. Meanwhile, 3 of the 5 persons who opted to relocate have now submitted a request for housing assistance. The government has agreed to provide that housing support for relocation. Construction should start within the next 2 weeks. 2 other families who cannot relocate as yet because they do not have the lands or property, so we're trying to aid support in that particular way also. It is well known because of the problem we have in Molyneux area there. In fact, I'm being affected because that, of course, as everyone knows, is in the heart of my constituency, so now I have to go through the Monkmorris Road, which is, of course, not the best at this particular time. And, of course, traffic has been affected enormously from the western side coming to St. George's. And trucks are not allowed to use that section of road from Molyneux to a Monkmorris area. So it means that most of them have to attempt to pass through the entire eastern side from Sauters or from St. John's or Victoria, or take a chance and go through New Hampshire area, which of course is a very difficult area to traverse. We recognize this, and what we realize is that several years ago, in fact, when I was a young boy, there was a bypass road called Monkuma Road, which is which intersect at the Grenville Vale Road just after the bridge there. So when we looked at it and we realized if we are able to fix that road and to renovate it and rebuild it, it will make traffic situation much easier, because it will, then you can cut across that road, Grenville section there, and end up in Bolio area, which it means you don't have to go through that difficult traversing area to New Hampshire and to Constantine, and which of course itself has to be done soon under the feeder road project that we have announced lately. So that design on that work on that road has commenced, will commence in the next 2 weeks, and implementation will begin in the third quarter of this year. So certainly we hope before the 2022, we expect to have an alternative road which will make access to St. George's much easier, or access from St. George's to the western side much easier than it is at this particular time. The Grenville Commercial Complex, you know, that we have announced, that where we will have a major public building in Grenville to house all government offices and be able to rent spaces to private sector persons. That project is now, the design is completed and construction should begin earnest in May 2021. The Simone Cultural Center, and all my brothers and sisters in Simone would be anxiously waiting for this. The design has been finalized and the tender document is now available. Construction should begin in May 2021. Well, in a sense that it's the right time, because let's face it, no serious cultural activities is taking place right now, and not expected to take place in this year. So when that whole cultural activities recommence in the country, in 2022, we expect that Simone Cultural Center, one of the icon of cultural activities, will be ready for the people in St. Andrews and the country as a whole. So the Melody Puppetet semi-final, which constantly over the years used to be held, and I know Selwyn used to be part of that too, so would be there. So we also just quickly mentioned that the area of the youth activities, and we have mentioned before that the problem we've had with some of the Imani young people have been, thousands of them have been on the providing services, excellent services in many cases, not all, but most cases, to the country, and some of them have been on the Imani, so-called Imani definition for almost more than the 2 years that they were supposed to be training. At this point in time, the report I have is that 64% of these trainees are now being officially engaged. Those that came from 2013 to 2018, and that is batch 1 to batch 6, and they would already been transitioned to permanent status in serious position, not therefore earning salaries way beyond the $800 and $900 that they used to be getting consistently. Efforts also are now underway to ensure that the remaining 1,811 trainees will be transitioned similarly. So basically, just one other point I want to raise in the tourism area, because I'm sure we are listening to what is taking place internationally. The UK Airlines have now reported that they will resume flights early in April, which coincide with the movement of some of the hotel activities, Sandals and others, to reopen in April of this year. And of course, all efforts have been made to put all systems in place to protect the country as far as the virus is concerned. And we must say that we're getting cooperation from the tourism sector at all levels. So, friends, I just want to make the point that that this situation we are now facing involves the cooperation of all our citizens in the country. I've been stressing this over and over, and we also want to thank the press in general for the consistent reporting and the necessity to protect our country. As you know, we've been lauded regionally and internationally for having protected our country. We had one period of cluster when people got concerned, and we've brought it under control. And as you can see, comparatively speaking to countries in the region or outside, Grenada has been lauded as one of the countries that are performing reasonably well. So we must not drop our guard, so to speak, and we must ensure that priority is given to protecting the health of the population. On this note, therefore, I welcome again our friends in the media, and of course open now for any questions or comments, suggestions or ideas that you have and any members of the public may send in, I assume, through their normal social media content.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that very informative bit of information there, setting the stage for this morning's press conference. I'm sure that Selwyn and Rachel have come armed with a multitude of questions. So Selwyn, we'll yield to the lady on the floor and
ladies first.
allow Rachel to open bat, so to speak. Rachel?
Good morning, sir. My first question is, you attended a 2-day virtual CARICOM Heads of Government meeting this week. What is the outcome of that? That's one. Do you think the trust between trade unions and government have broken down over the 4% issue, as trade unionists are complaining that the government has failed to genuinely level with them?
Okay. Thank you, Rochelle. I would say that, it's a new phenomenon, as we know. I mean, normally around this time we would be traveling to one Caribbean countries where we meet and discuss issues and get an opportunity for just social interaction. Like everything else here now, even in our own country, we all miss this. This we could do have all the discussions and attempt to solve all sorts of problems. But inability to watch each other and communicate and watch the eye contact and so on, we miss this. And similarly, I think the leaders expressed the view. But relatively speaking, we are able to go through a number of major issues and agree on some fundamental issues. Of course, the usual question of the implementation of the single market and economy, we're brought up to date on some of the issues of concern that we have to continue to work on. That was certainly done. Clearly, the issue of food security. Guyana presented a report. As you know, Guyana has tremendous potential to be able to produce food for the rest of the region or for most part of the region. And specifically, Guyana brought a serious proposal on how all countries in the region can join hands together and produce enough food to avoid us from importing a lot of stuff from outside, which are not as healthy as what we can produce here under better healthy conditions and so on in the region. And it will save billions of dollars because the food that the monies we're spending outside, they are hard currency for the entire region at this point in time. In fact, emphasis was placed in the question of poultry, but of course there are other areas, as I mentioned to colleague heads. We import in so much. In Grenada is over $11 million worth. I mean, when you look at this, that if we can produce, use a portion of that and create opportunity, we'll create some more jobs. But as you know, the question of the cost of feed and the cost of electricity is a major factor why we are not able to get our private sector and the manufacturing sector to produce more of our poultry. But that we had thorough discussion on this, and it was agreed that we need to move aggressively in meeting that fundamental needs. We also had formulation on the question of our approach towards tourism, revival of the tourism industry, how we can work together to ensure that we do not go it in piecemeal by individual countries solo, so to speak. So I think that is something. And in fact, when you looked at the whole question of COVID-19, the whole point was raised that we need to advance the question of how we can work closer together, because by doing so, let's face it, this is one little region. We're able to help each other more and be more effective as a collective body in protecting our population and of course controlling the virus, and be able to revive our economy regionally, and by implication our friends in the diaspora and others will feel more comfortable returning and giving support to the individual countries. So these are, I would say, some of the issues. We did discuss security issues, the need to advance using ICT. As I reported to them some of the concerns that I had, that we need to more aggressively pursue the question of the single ICT space, which of course would have aided our work on the production and availability of the vaccine to protect the population. And it was agreed with a number of countries that I would be taking initiative to contact various country leaders who already have given their support, while others have not done. Those who have done it and are ready, we agree that we'll go forward with them, and that the others come on as we move forward. So I would say it was a highly successful meeting. We discussed the issue of Haiti and the problems there, the issue of the border issue with Belize and Guatemala, the issue of Guyana, issue of the Escopio region with Venezuela. That came up also, and of course we gave full support to Guyana and Belize in those confrontations. So generally speaking, without the actual interaction, I said we must consider that it was a highly, I would say, successful session, and hopefully giving teeth to what we agreed to. I think that has been where the deficit has been historically. So if we can give teeth to the conclusions, then I think we would have achieved a lot. Rachel, the other question you asked, whether in fact, I want to be careful how you've formulated your question. You did ask whether you think there's a breakdown in the relationship. Well, not from my end. I don't have a problem with the trade union leadership and in expressing their position. I have a national responsibility that the trade union leadership does not have. And so while they would express their views on going forward and what they believe is necessary, I have to be careful, because my clientele is not just the workers attached to those bodies, and it's for the entire population. So I don't think it is fair for them to say that the government has not engaged them. We have engaged, we have written, we have spoken. The committee has worked with people. The problem is they don't like what we say. And I mean, you can't tell somebody that they must tell you what you want to hear for us to feel good. I respect every single human being. I've said so over and over. I do not necessarily agree with people's position on several issues, even in my own party and government. I don't always agree with every member, but I respect every member, and every member know that they have a right to express their position, and that's the case with the trade union. I cannot agree with them that we should be providing 4% increase in a time that the government has said that it does not have the resources. In a time where we know that their workers are the ones who know the data coming from the Ministry of Finance. Even before I get it, public workers, they have the numbers. And we have known that the amount of revenue that we earn in 2019, when we agreed to the 4%, is far less than we're doing today. So clearly we are not in a position. And in addition to that, we have tremendous amount of additional support that we have to give to thousands of workers who are marginalized and without revenue. One thing I always tell all of us, we must, sometimes when I have a problem, I'm looking as an individual, I think of myself and what I would like to do more with what I'm supposed to believe I should get, and other additional things that I must, material things. But I always remember, as Christian people, we always are told that we must also think about our neighbor next door, you know? So while I want more, and sometimes legitimately so, and no one should be mad with me for wanting this. It doesn't mean that I should always get it, because the other person who has nothing at all deserve an opportunity to have something. And I think sometimes, I believe all of us, and I did put out a proposal and said that, we should examine the possibility of all of us who are working today should look at giving something to a fund that is not going to be run by government, that will aid opportunities for those who have lost their jobs and who are in serious trouble financially, socially, and otherwise. I am telling you today, and I have told my friends in the trade union movement, the teachers and the public sector workers, every time I speak to them, I talk to them openly, like I do now, that, I have been in government for 34 years, right? This is 36 years, sorry. I have never seen the level of requests for help coming from individual persons that I'm seeing today. I mean, people are coming to me that never came to me before. In my constituency, I see more demands, but don't forget. In fact, when some of my constituents come and say, don't forget, you are not my only constituency. As Prime Minister, people come for me from all over the country. From Sotez, from St. Andrews, from St. Patrick's, St. Andrews, St. David's, Carriacou and Petit Martinique, the St. George's Parish as a whole, all the constituencies. They come, St. John's, St. Mark's, and seeking help. And when I tell them the government not in a position, they tell me, well, what can I do for myself? I said, well, if I had, in fact, I told some of my friends, I do Zoom contact and communication with people. They go to my office and they go on Zoom and I talk to them. I tell them, if I was able to help you with what you're asking me and all the hundreds of requests that come, if I was the owner of a bank, the bank would have busted already. So sometimes, but when you listen to the plea, you have to feel, sometimes I leave the Zoom session and I have to recover for after an hour or so to relax, take it easy, because it's painful watching people who never ask you for nothing. Some people being asked to, they rent in places they can't pay, and they've been threatened to be out of a place of a board. And some people, they can't send their kids. So we have to help them to take kids' needs at this particular time. Some of the challenges people face with food, providing food for the families. So I'm making the point. I honestly believe that the union leadership, and I'm clear to me that they're not doing themselves a lot of credit with the population. I believe they would have been far more effective if they had said to the government, listen, don't wait for the government to say it. I know I'm living in a country, I have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems. I am proposing, in other words, they're coming forward and saying, I'm proposing, let's work together to see what time you'll be able to meet that commitment. Because the government has not said it won't meet it. The government has simply said that don't ask for it now, so that we met with the Taxi Association recently. They called me. And when I listened to I felt sick. Some of them are saying in 1 week now, and these are independent people that never came to me. Some of them said $15, they make a whole week in one hire. $15, a man has children to send to school, to feed, and so on, family to take care of, and that's the situation. So the situation is dire indeed. So I have no problem. I am not mad. I want to make it very clear with our trade union brothers. I don't agree with them, but I'm not mad with them. And I certainly, for the minute the government find a way in which we can meet that, we would meet it. I heard some statement to the effect that the government is not paying, is able to pay, but it's waiting for close to next election time to give out the money. so that you will get support. I've been in politics 36 years. That is poor politics, bad politics. In fact, if you want to use a political tool like that, if you give a man what he earns and you wait at a certain time to give him convenient to you, you're not going to get his support for that. What you may be better off doing is if you give him something that he didn't expect to get. That makes a lot more sense. So it means, therefore, any serious political institution would want to have more room closer to election so that it can give out something more than he normally has to. That will make a lot more political sense. I shouldn't be saying this because I'm educating people, but sometimes I have to speak frankly how I feel, and not necessarily to always speak politically, and that's been my view. I took a long time, Rachel. You took half the interview as well.
I would like to get a little bit more on this CARICOM thing.
Yes. Okay.
CARICOM is decades old, was 4 decades old. The meeting this week, have you gotten the inclination that CARICOM is really ready now to strengthen that integration movement? Based on the issues, COVID created that opportunity for us to reflect on what is to happen to this one Caribbean family, this closeness that you just mentioned. It hasn't been happening because we, all different people, all different cultures, and probably the leaders go in meetings, they agree on certain things, and when they reach back in their own domestic space, based on the circumstances, things turn topsy-turvy. And we go back the next year, confronting the same issue, agreeing on actually the same thing, and no movement. I think the Caribbean people want to see more. Cricket has told us this. Cricket in particular has told us this, because that is one area that we all seem to cling together.
And UWI. Education, UWI.
Yes.
Success there. No, Selvin, you're almost speaking for me in that sense. I raised it at the heads meeting that as someone who has been the longest serving person, I'm the only leader at the session there that was there in 95. Ralph came in after. So he's the second oldest head in terms of time to start regional head meeting. So I said to them, I've seen this play over and over. We speak a lot. We've taken some very useful positions on regional issues and agree, but sometimes we go back home and we see completely different results from our initiative and actions. And we have to stop that. I always make the point. Sometimes when we believe we're achieving something individually by taking a solo position, in the end I believe we ourselves would have done better, maybe in the medium term and long term. Maybe the short term gain may not necessarily always meant that the medium term gain is going to be helped. I feel if we take that action together, in the end, collectively we'll be better off as a region, and I also believe individually we'll be better off. But that sort of initial boldness and courage to suffer a little bit in some cases for the bigger good in the medium term and long term, I think it's a key issue. I think members have to come to terms that has been a sore problem. So your point you're making is clearly understood, and I have consistently made it. I made it again, and with the ICT program, we have agreed that ICT and the single space, ICT space, is crucial for the success of the region. But each of us going alone, it's going to cost us a lot more, and our people not benefit in the optimal way. If the region go together, why should we have to pay rates differently for telephone services and internet services and so on? We're going from one country to the next in the region. the Great America landscape is thousands of miles apart in different areas, but they don't have, I mean, come on. They don't have to pay the big difference in internet coverage. Why are we doing that to ourselves? You know, and so I think the point is being made, and that's why we agreed at this meeting that, for example, ICT that I am leading, we agreed, those of us who are ready and following the initiative and taking steps what we asked them to do, we should start and go ahead. Don't wait for the rest. And then the rest will come on accordingly.
You outlined a number of projects there as it relates to getting things back on track, construction, which we're depending on largely. The COVID is here. It's upon us. So far, for the past 3 weeks, we could say, somewhat monitoring and doing the surveillance necessary to keep Grenada clean, COVID-free, so to speak. Have we drawn up any program where there's going to be a timeline so that these gatherings we're talking about here, the movement of tradesmen and women going to these construction sites to work, the actual movement of the economy through this exercise, have we drawn up any timeline as to when we can approach this? Because, you know, we're still restricted to do certain things. As a matter of fact, hearing from persons, especially with the curfew, the movement of the time from 1 to another, 12 now to 4, do we see any room for relaxation of that so that we can get extra movement?
I don't think there's much activity taking place from 12 midnight to 4 o'clock as far as construction activity is concerned. So I don't think construction has been inhibited to any extent from what is taking place now. There's an established protocol. So I see scores of workers coming from the countryside into St. George's and vice versa, depending on where the project exists, being moved under a certain level of protocol, not always keeping with the level that we want. But I've been seeing it, and to me, we encourage it as much as possible. And for example, the Labourer project, as you know, is now ongoing with not as much local labor yet, because you're doing a lot of the technical work now, and that's expected to employ lots of people, hundreds and hundreds of workers. The range, as you know, the project in St. David's has started. In fact, the local representative should be seeing me this morning additional initiatives that they're asking about. The Mount Hartman project, they're proceeding to implement and to let that project go forward. We expect, and a lot of the schools being built around the country. We see workers moving from one place to the next. So I don't know that there's been a lot of negative impact on with the curfew at this particular time because of the ability. In fact, a lot of the workers who are employed in the hotel industry are now actively employed in the construction projects, and I think more and more of this, as more of the projects come on stream, which we're spending a lot of time. In fact, the Ministry of Works have been mandated with Finance and the Ministry of Implementation to get these projects going, because the funding is there. Some of them are local funding, some of them are local plus loan funding from soft funding from international institutions and friendly governments. For example, the Western Main Road project that the British government gave us almost $40 million US. That is ongoing. And the only drawback we had was the Molyneux problem that we had affected the movement in that area. So we expect to see more and more of those projects. I'm heartened by the tremendous amount of work taking place in the infrastructure. The people at Silver Sands are now moving to the next phase, a number of 2 other projects that they're getting ready to start. So there are so much opportunities that come. I'm very heartened by the possibility of serious additional projects for the country at this time.
Mr. Prime Minister, still with the unions. The government has...
You represent the union in Orisha.
The government said it cannot pay 4%. First, the government said it's asking for a deferral, right? And then it said, okay, yes, pay, but by the end of 2021. Given the projected huge budget deficit, how will we be able to do that?
No, well, we didn't make an absolute commitment. They asked us about when you think. We said, if things go well and the economy recover. For example, let's assume that we were able to vaccinate the population and we got a herd mentality thing in place so that we won't be infecting each other. Then we could go back to business as usual by maybe October, September, some place like that. That's projections. It means that we might see an uptick with the tourism sector moving part again. We St. George's University coming back. A lot of the apartment buildings are empty. You know how much revenue that were being lost, how much jobs are being lost. If that comes back on stream and we start getting back the revenues that we used to have, then we can start to maybe not pay out all, but we can start to pay. So that's the point that we are making. So we did not make an absolute commitment to say, definitely by the end of the year you will see that. But we can't say that. And that's the problem we've been telling the leadership of the unions. How do we, in a pandemic time, when we don't know all that we should know or we want to know about that virus, every day you're hearing about a new variant and a new variant, how do we want to make a commitment to meet a particular problem that we have paying workers without knowing what will happen in the next, and make it absolutely so. So I don't think, I know the union leadership, while they might be saying something, understand that. But that's just harsh reality. I would love to pay it. If we could do it and pay it in December, give people a good Christmas, and they can't say, well, this is election time. I would love to do it before Santa Claus comes this year.
Okay, where are we with, and like how soon the talk about international management consultants will be in place? They're
working with the World Bank, because the World Bank would promise to provide support. And we're looking at grant support for this. We have to put in place an interim board that is being proposed already with a number of local persons, business persons and otherwise. We are not going to see it loaded with public servants. You won't be seen, or party people, so to speak. We are going to be seen, because GRENLEC is such an institution that guides the development of the country. You want to see people with that vision and understanding of business activities and getting the country going. You did hear me mention a while ago the impact on the poultry industry with the cost and the manufacturing sector in general, with the cost of electricity and so on. And of course we know the problem with agro, Caribbean agro and feed, which would affect the poultry industry as a whole. And the economy of scale, of course, makes it difficult for us to compete with other countries. So we have to level the playing field as much as possible in those areas if we hope to be able to expand the opportunities in some of these areas of serious opportunities for development.
Yeah. The manufacturing sector, as you just mentioned, as it relates to the debilitating factors that are you satisfied that Grenadians on the whole are inclined to manufacturing?
I'm quite clear they are, but we have to be practical. The fact is, when you look at this, you want to set up a manufacturing operation to produce, say, fruits, juices, as an example. Most of them will tell you, with all their good intention, they're producing quality stuff. But the cost of production is the problem. The cost of some of the materials sometimes is higher than what they would want. But more so, the cost of electricity. And some of the hotels that have been seeing real trouble in the country has a lot to do. The price of electricity has been so large that it makes it difficult for them to make profit. And a man is not in business just because he wants to be in business. He wants to be in business. He has to profit. because he invested his resources and he expect to get something from it. So I'm convinced that they will, but if we reduce the cost of the materials, and government has to work with them in that area, and also make it more available, that's a factor. If we help with the question of the technology, because that has to be a key. You can't be operating as you were in the 20th century. This is the 21st century. IT services are going to be crucial for the success of any serious business activities. And by government now owning the Grand Lake and moving towards a plan of action to reduce the cost of electricity, I expect that over a period of time, when that situation is resolved, that we'll see more people interested. So I believe, Telvin, to answer your question, I believe more people are definitely interested in manufacturing activities, but the end product, which is profit, has been the serious mitigating factor.
I want to talk about one of the areas that you love, and cricket.
Yeah.
You have been looking at the situation
Yes.
pertaining to regional cricket.
Yes.
There was the situation where the team went to Bangladesh,
Yeah.
and some juniors
Yes.
did well.
Yes.
And now that there's a team coming to the Caribbean, Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
what are your expectations of a squad being selected? As a matter of fact, I understand Chris Gayle has made himself available. What are your expectations of a squad being selected to carry our regional cricket back to the days that we are accustomed to, now that we have won a test series in Bangladesh?
Well, I must laud the performance and the results of the team that went to Bangladesh. I personally did not have much hope that they will be able to compete seriously with the Bangladesh team in any of the competition, and more so at the test level. I really did not expect it, and you must give the members who were given an opportunity with the fact that many of the top members did not make themselves available. You have to give them a lot of credit, and therefore the Western selectors will have to be very careful in going forward. If these members went out there and pulled together and made the necessary sacrifice and commitment and produced, and if you then turn around and with a new situation now we face with Sri Lanka coming, and drop some of those persons who perform very well, and in favor of some people that did not go for those personal reasons, one way or the other, I think it will hurt the morale of the team. So I think the selectors have a job on their hand to be very careful. My own view is that I honestly believe that the West Indies should have a T20 team. I don't believe that some of the young, talented players who I believe have enormous potential for Test cricket should be picked for playing T20 cricket. I think certain people like Chris Gayle and others like that should be there, because at his age he don't want to be in a field for 2 and 3 days, and he still have some skills that he can make a serious contribution. I see 1 or 2 persons. A Pollard, for example, could be on a T20 and a one-day team, and so on, and even possible Test cricket. But I don't see many players that should be crossing those boundaries. I honestly believe that the selectors should look at the 3 different categories of competitions and decide this guy is good for serious hope for Test cricket, and I believe I call T20 VOOP cricket. And while I like the entertainment, I don't believe that's the quality of cricket I love to see. and sit and watch home and television and otherwise. So I certainly don't like the idea of the Hetmeyers and the Porans and them playing this level of cricket. I believe these guys have enormous talent. Maybe a one-day team and test cricket. And I believe that the selectors need to look. I'm not a selector, but I'm given an armchair position that where I sit, a view as I see it as somebody who loves the game and see it as I see it.
How do you comment on the Windward's performance?
Well, they tried. I mean, you have about 6 Grenadians on the team. I think they tried hard, and I think I want to commend them on the thing. But I think we have to agree, when you look at the competition as a whole, that definitely the best 2 teams in the competition, in fact, have arrived at the finals. I think you have to agree that Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago definitely, on performance and watching the quality of performance, I think we have to agree, while cricket has its uncertainties, that there were certain results. If you are going to bet on the final 2 teams in the competition, I think you certainly would have bet that Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago would be in the finals, and I think this is what we have. So I look forward to watching the game tomorrow.
Okay, what is the exact management system that is in place now at GrenLec, and who is actually administering it right now?
The old management is still in place. Nothing has changed. The ownership is the one that has changed, but certainly we've said that we want to manage the situation properly. The gentleman who is there, Mr. Kova, is still the manager in the company, and the whole structure remains, the accountants and everybody there. So that's the present situation. We're not rushing, but we're putting systems in place properly. The GrenLec is too important for us to make haphazard decision on just because we have been able to buy over the company at this majority shares at least. One has to be careful. We did promise the nation this, and we're doing precisely this. So anything we do, we will do it carefully, with a clear understanding of the impact on the electricity services and the development in the country as a whole.
Okay, when will Grenadians interested in buying shares in the new GrenLec be able to do so?
There will be, we have an announcement to that effect when the terms of reference of all these things are done. The new board members have taken, the permanent board members, right now you have an interim board, interim chairman. When that happens, the country will be informed, and the people who are interested in buying shares, and you have to decide what the value of the shares that you're asking people to buy at. All these would be made public.
Okay, so now we're into the Mount Hartman project.
Yes.
Given all the many failed attempts to develop the area and the controversies, do you understand why many people have skepticism about yet another idea to develop the area?
Well, I had my skepticism too, so not them alone. But I feel relatively confident that the people there, they have already invested an enormous sum. Government has received some serious monies, at least $20 million already in cash in the bank for the sale of the land. We expect another $35 million US in the not too distant future. So I would not invest that level of money and not meet, because if they invest and did not perform, they would tend to lose this resources. Because they have not owned the land yet until they made the complete payment. So, and a number of activities are ongoing. A lot of engineering work, survey work has been. A lot of money has been spent there by the developers, and we have confidence that based on the research we have done and with the individuals, that they do have the resources by the persons involved to meet the responsibility. But there are lots of things that you dot the I's and cross the T's. So you would not actually see a lot of construction activities overnight in Mount Hartman, but we are moving step by step to implement this project. So yes, people have a right to be skeptical, as I said, I myself. We knew about this activity and possibility for about a year and a half now. We didn't say a word, simply because we ourselves felt that we couldn't continue making announcements and statements about Mahatman Project and later on to find out that the people were not serious. We didn't have the resources to implement what they said they were going to do.
Okay. What lessons have government learned from the previous failed attempts?
You mean failed attempt? Well, the lesson clearly is to probably talk less, say less before, and actually see boots on the ground and see money in the bank first. Maybe that's the lesson we could learn from this, because we've done the research in all the cases, checked other persons for their credibility in each of those cases, and I think the thing we had not done is to check to see whether the money is in the bank, so to speak, and they start putting boots on the ground before we make any such announcement. So that's the lesson which we would have learned.
If you have another Mount Hartman related question, we'll stay with you. If not, we'll go over to Selwyn. You have one more Mount Hartman? Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, so we understand that the UN agency has recommended that government ensures it preserve a sanctuary there. And it does not fall victim to the development. Can you categorically say today that this will be the case?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The sanctuary will be maintained, no interference. As far as that project is concerned, they have committed we will not have sold or will not agree to sell unless that was in writing and commitment made, and any breach of it will yield specific actions by the government. So I could give a total commitment to that effect.
Another area that I know you love, politics.
I don't know if you love me.
NNP.
Yes.
I guess as much that you've been monitoring the...
Yes.
Have you taken any polls lately so as to check, one, the performance of the government, the performance of the party? What is the status and the strength of the party currently?
Well, we did commission a poll last year before all this, the virus took effect. We did commission a poll. What we noticed was there were a high degree of non-response from the survey, but from all indication that if an election was held then, the result would probably be the same as it was in 2018. What is happening from the survey that we saw was not only was the government, the party doing reasonably well, but the opposition seemed to have been losing significantly. A lot of its own supporters were not expressing doubts about their ability to govern. And that is what we noticed from the survey. And that is not to rest on our laurels, because clearly politics can change in 2 weeks. A lot can change in political activities. So we are not resting. And I could tell you this, despite what is taking place in the pandemic, we are actively reorganizing all our party groups around the country, even in my own Northwest, where I've been, as you know, we have very strong results. We're taking no chances. We've started having village meetings within the protocol set. We started last week, and we had 2 meetings so far, very successful meetings. People coming out, but they can't all come inside because we tell them no way. And they all come with their masks, and they ask questions. They ask about the union negotiations, the state of play of the COVID-19 and other opportunities for job creation in the country. So from next week, for example, every day, having one village meeting, and then we have a constituency branch the following week to put in place the new executive, and every constituency has been mandated to do precisely this. So we are Northwest St. George's leading by example.
Can we expect the same slate going forward in the next election?
It's obvious that there will be changes. Clearly, that I think it is known that certainly, Northeast St. George's, there will be a new candidate going forward in Northeast. Mr. Tobias made his own decisions, and for what it's worth. And certainly in the case of St. Patrick West, Brother Anthony Boson has announced that he is not going to be putting himself forward. So the party is moving, and there may be other changes coming forward too.
How you see the opposition challenges against your party now?
Well, I think I expressed that position a while ago. You see, Selwyn, and I think that's just the problem I think we face in this country. I have always advocated for two viable political parties in the country, but the NDC is making itself not being seen as a serious opposition in terms of its behavior and attitude. You cannot be making statements against everything that appears to have benefit for the country just because the NNP started it or initiated it. They have never taken a nationalistic position on issues that are valuable to the country. I don't know, but you can't tell me. I would like them to tell me one national issue that this government has initiated in all its years being in office, not just this period, in which the NDC have come out and applaud the government. Not one single issue. Everyone they oppose, and everyone turned out later to prove to be the correct decision. Therefore, we have benefited and they've lost. And I give you a simple example. When Sandals came here, late 2012, and the NDC gave Sandals literally almost everything, because they had no real projects in this country at the time. I looked at it and didn't think that I thought Sandals got too much on concessions. I said I did not utter a word. In fact, I encouraged Bruce Chott that, and I told him, I said, while I didn't like the fact that you get everything, the country needs jobs and need opportunities. And I complimented the government for taking the position to get the project going. And I never mentioned publicly my reservations with the concessions, because I believe that's how it should be. I remember one carnival, they used to have this every time there's a carnival or a serious activity in the country, we had serious problem with it when the next morning plastic bottles all over the carriage and so on, you know, and on the waters and all over people. There were no cleaning up. There was no attempt to clean up the place. And in other words, it happened when we were in government before and when NDC came in and so on. And I remember one year, I think it was Finley St. Louis as Minister of Health. I got up, because I normally used to be running on the road, and I got up that morning, carnival morning, and the entire place was cleaned. I went on national radio and complimented the Minister of Health and the government for that decision, because I know when you do things like that, and you give the government credit for something that it does right, when the government makes a mistake and you criticize, it's going to be more effective. But I don't think the NDC understands this. Everything that is associated with Keith Mitchell, I think probably is more me than NNP. I have a feeling some people, when I leave this thing, some people might become NNP. But as long as Keith Mitchell is leading it, they don't want nothing to do with it. But I still love them. I always tell people, and you heard me say that in Parliament and doing the tribute to them. Some people might see me as their enemy, but I don't see them as my enemy. I don't have an enemy. I have opposition forces, people who do not support my policy and philosophy, but I don't have enemies. And I don't think we should have enemies in our lifestyle. Life is too short. But Nimrod's Deputy Prime Minister just a few years ago, he's gone to the great beyond. All of us have to end there. So why fight each other? Why try to run down each other, hurt each other personally? We can criticize each other's policy. We can score political points, but we don't have an attempt to destroy one another and to hurt the livelihood of individual persons or even hurt their families in the process of doing our political activities.
And a conversation with the Prime Minister is always very interesting, and we tend to get carried away. We are just about 10:15. Prime Minister, maybe another 10 minutes to entertain a couple more questions. Rachel, let's go to you, and then we'll come back to Selwyn.
Okay, so Prime Minister, We're going over to education. Where are we with the issues of the full functioning of schools? The CMO had indicated that there is no reason why the students should not have a face-to-face classes, right? What is stopping the government from doing so?
I think the government is certainly clearly concerned about the COVID-19 virus and the possibility that if you do it just like we used to do before, as you know, some schools, some students are in fact attending school physically and interacting with their teachers. So that is something I think we continue to do. And I think the ministers have certainly expressed or articulated a position on how, under what condition that we'll have school back as it used to be. But that would depend a lot on the health-related issues and the ability to control any possible infection in the country as a whole. So I think that we are very concerned. I'm extremely concerned about our children, because this is, as you know, education is not just about the consumption of materials and the things that you learn from books and from your teachers. It's also about your self-development. It's also about your social infrastructure, the people ability to interact with each other, the kids. And I was going to school in primary and secondary school. I look forward to meet my friends and interact with them. When we are studying together, we're solving problems together, and we're able to share ideas and come up with solutions. It's to give you that whole camaraderie sort of atmosphere, which I believe our young people are suffering from the lack of that at this particular time.
Okay, so the teachers' industrial action is mostly felt by the students and their parents, and more so the poors who cannot afford to pay for private tutoring. The consequences of today's deficit in education shall be felt tomorrow. Isn't it time the government find a solution? And do you have any concerns about classes being disrupted by further industrial action?
Well, of course I'm concerned about any disruption, and I don't see the reason for any disruption, to tell the honest truth. I don't see how the government position on the 4% that we said we defer should cause a teacher to refuse to teach their children. I can't support this, and I don't think the teachers themselves or the leadership are getting any credit from the population. I don't think the population is certainly happy with this. I don't think they're helping their cause. To go into a classroom and say that you're there, but you're not answering any question from the students. I mean, that is a bit, to me, I don't understand how anyone could initiate that as a serious way of protest, because you're affecting children. You're not affecting Keith Mitchell and the New National Party's government. You are the government as a whole. You're affecting the children of the country, and some of them are your own children and your family's children. So that beats me. It beats me. One thing I don't understand is I find not enough people are speaking out against this, because your children's future is something that it should not be the government or Keith Mitchell talking about this, or Minister of Education, or some person heading a school. It should be everybody, because that impacts on everybody's life. I hope and pray that situation will end sooner than later.
With the vaccination, with the vaccination process now on the way, is there a projection as to when the island economy will fully recover?
When the island what?
Will fully reopen.
Well, as I said before, and remember my opening piece, with the vaccination process ongoing, as we get, if we are able, you know, I did my first vaccination, and on the 26th of March, I'll have the second, which means based on the research and scientific information, I should be protected from 90% or more protection from any infection. And if we can achieve this by September, October, with a vaccination program throughout the country, and I said, if you're able to vaccinate 60% of the population, that methodology should yield a sort of implication that we can go back to business as usual to some extent. Well, we still probably wearing a mask in some cases because it means that the virus could still be around to some extent. But will give us a certain immune aspect so as far as infection is concerned going forward. So I think that should be the focus.
Should we accomplish that by around July, sign for the carnival, the jump up?
I think it would be a mistake, even if we are able to get that. I don't see how we'll be able to achieve 60% vaccination by July. But even if, I think it's a mistake to go and have a mass event, because you still have 40% of the people who will not have been vaccinated. I don't think it's a smart thing. I think we have announced already that we won't encourage. We recommending that there will be no formal carnival this year, and we asked the Ministry of Culture to meet with the various stakeholders and see what can be done to aid the pain, because many people lived and operated by their livelihood by cultural activities. What can we do, like what we have done now for the Taxi Association? What can we do for the cultural artists and other people involved who live by the cultural activities in the country? What can we do to help them? All this is, that's why we say to the teachers and our public workers, you know, we have to help all these people too. We can't talk. The hotel workers, we have to help the Taxi Association, those who are working in the cruise ship industry are doing extremely well, and hotel industry now, they're out there without a dollar. We have to help them. And some of them are in difficulties. And so that's why I think we should be going. Okay?
That was your final question. You can get one more.
Probably I think you did right to say for the rest.
I'm sure you can. So it has certainly been a very interesting conversation this morning. I'm sure you'd agree, Prime Minister. Thank you so much for joining us. Any final closing thoughts or comments you'd want to leave with the reporters here and, of course, our listening and viewing public?
I enjoy this session. I much prefer this type of interaction with our media persons than just sitting in for and reading a speech or speaking to. I prefer this because I get an opportunity to give what is coming off of my chest, so to speak, with less diplomacy involved. And therefore, Rachel, I enjoy your questions, particularly as we relate to our union brothers and sisters, and I think this is good. So I'm looking forward to the continuation of this sort of interaction with the members of the press and the public as a whole. Maybe in the future, maybe what we probably can do is to have people send in questions. I think that would be a good addition to it. So not just the reporters or media persons who are in front of us, and they themselves may be able to ask people to send in questions that they can ask. I think it'll be good because they'll be engaging the entire country as a whole. But I want to thank everybody for their presence here and look forward to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much to our listening and viewing audience for joining us this morning for this conversation with the Prime Minister. Thank you. We'll see you again next time.